Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Thomas. I'm with Intake Kings. We will get started in just a moment. Just give us one moment and please put yourselves on mute, and we'll have some time for questions at the end and be able to talk a little bit about the presentation. We'll give it 2 more minutes just to let everybody get in here. Great. How is everyone doing this afternoon? I hope you're having a good Tuesday. Excited to start this webinar with you folks and talk a little bit more about Intake Kings, who we are, but most importantly, what we believe in, and that is intake. And intake is sales, and that is really the start of our series of webinars that we will be covering kinds of different topics around intake, re-engagement, close more leads that are coming in, kinds of different things. But most importantly, we wanted to start out with is actually what we do to help law firms. And the number one thing, our mantra is intake is sales. We are really trying to transform your lead conversion from making to closing. So a little bit about Intake Kings. My name is James Thomas. I am one of the co-founders here at Intake Kings. We are not a call center. We're a technology and innovation company that has developed some not only software, but also strategies that go around intake and how it's treated. Like I said at the beginning of the call, and the name of this webinar is Intake is Sales. If you are not treating your intake department, a closing team that way, they don't have the right tools, there's not a substantial amount of follow-up, and we'll talk a lot about this, then you're not in a good situation to take your leads to the next level. So what we do at Intake Kings is we do legal intake, and we really focus in on the process that people utilize at the law firm level. We also utilize automation and technology with some software that we use. Our software is pre-retainer software. Very, very important. So it's utilized for reach and making sure people that come through the lead funnel convert into retainers based on criteria, obviously, but we can customize that for you. Really, the software is to automate and also attribute where everything's coming from. And we are sales experts. Intake Kings was built off the backs of sales experts. We come from a sales training, sales management background. Our team of experienced sales professionals trains and equips your intake staff with the skills and strategies needed that are leads into clients. So we'll go over that as well. So what does Intake Kings do? Our automated software, audits, consulting are all to turn leads into clients. Intake audits, what we do is we go out and we will audit your law firm. We will do a phone call. We will do a form fill. We'll chat, identify these things. Now, everything we do, that's something also you can do. We'll talk about in some best practices. Training for intake teams. We will also help you train your intake teams so they're more based around selling and less over order taking, and help you hire the right people, get the job done from the standpoint of closing those outstanding retainers that may be out there, or even when you have someone on the fence, getting them across the finish line. We have technology and automation. Our software is powerful. It helps with lead conversion, line management, automates a lot of the follow-up from texting and emailing. So it's there to maximize, the number of conversions you're going to get. So attribute where all these leads are coming from. Why does Intake Kings matter to your firm? Case management tools don't help you close leads. Our software is designed for the pre-retainer conversion. So marketing is very expensive. Every missed lead is wasted money. The lead is crucial. That's why automation matters, because we can automate. As soon as a lead comes in, we can make sure someone has a text message, email into their cell phone and email box within seconds of becoming a lead. Your intake team is your front line. So you need to make sure you have your best people on the phones, and you have closers, and they're also utilizing the system to push people through as they go through the system. Just because we don't get someone on the first try doesn't mean that is a dead lead. We want to nurture that lead, and we want to re-engage with it. Are you losing to a broken intake process? Missed leads equals wasted marketing dollars. Law firms spend thousands per lead, but lose due to slow response time, poor skills, and lack of follow-up. This is probably the number one thing we see. When we do intake audits, we see that the speed to lead is the number one contributor to an inefficient intake system. What I mean by that is the time it takes for you to call someone back. They filled out a form on your website, they had a chat, or any of those things. Amazing how long it takes some firms to get back to their individual. So even if you can't get back to that individual right away, maybe you have a smaller firm, maybe you have someone else on the other phone, you can at least text them right away, asking them to book an appointment. asking them to communicate that way until you can get to them so we can stop them from going to other firms. Firm is spending thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, but your intake process poorly, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, and you really should become more efficient. You may not need more leads. You just could use some good intake and software to help you get to that next step. Every minute counts when you're dealing with leads. 78% of clients hire the first firm that responds to them. Firms that respond 5 minutes are 21 times more likely to convert the leads those who wait 30 minutes or longer. So like I said, in our findings with our intake audit, this is the number one contributor to an inefficient intake system. Poor training and poor technology also equals poor conversion. So maybe you're getting back to people right away, you're answering on every first ring, but if your training while you're on the phone and having these conversations isn't based around trying to get that person to understand why you are the right firm, accident, injury, criminal matter, whatever it may be, you have to convince them that you are the right firm, really push a point of value you bring as a firm and who you are and what types of cases you've closed. Intake teams are undertrained, underpaid, and undermotivated. And that way, most intakes that we see is that it doesn't matter if you close 1 lead or 10 leads a day, your pay and the amount of time you spend on these leads is the same. Intake isn't customer service, it's sales. And sales requires skills, scripts, and follow-up. Automated follow-up is super important. Email, text, and respond quickly and respond often. And what we find is, especially with the younger generations, is you have to be texting them. If you don't have that ability to text someone today or send them an email, or if you're trying to call them and all you're getting is voicemail, you have to have those options. Also, with our software, you can actually talk to them on the preferred social media channel as well. So you can connect with them there, which is also a big win if that lead came in under social media. Hidden revenue leaks in your intake process. How many calls will go unanswered? Potential cases drop due to poor follow-up. Your actual cost per signed client, not just per lead. How many cases get marked unwanted when you could have helped? So these are a couple of things that we see doing audits is unanswered calls, follow-up, we call once and we never get a call back. Really, when we get even further deeper into the audit, and talking to clients and as we start working with them more, what is the actual cost per lead when you start taking in all these other variables? And then times, and I know it's industry-wide, is that we have the cases. The times when we go through and we audit the unwanted cases, find that there's a lot of cases in there that are marked unwanted by an intake person, and actually there were cases that we could have, the firm could have helped on. So that's really, really important to audit those types of things as you're going through it, and really take a look deeply at unwanted cases, your cases overall, and how are you really looking at your cost per signed lead case. Intake team selling or just taking orders. The problem is most law firms treat their intake teams like customer service. Intake reps think their job is only to answer questions, not to close retainers or overcome objections, because they're not paid that way. So they're paid to sit there and they're paid an hourly wage is something that they, the day, like they just need to answer the call, person off the call, and then unless it's inspected, a way to follow up with that. Receptionists instead of sales professionals, and leads don't convert because no one guided to the potential client to a decision. So a lot of different variables and every different type of law that you have to be specific about. You have to make them feel, you have to be very empathetic when you talk to CEs when they come in the door. You have to talk to them a bit about your firm and about the situation and maybe cases that were like their case. That is very important. And then you always have to ask for, okay, some documents because we can help you, and you lead them to that signing. As I said before, what's the difference between order taking and sales driven intake? Is passively taking calls, minimal questions. You're trying to get off the phone as fast as possible. Facts, not solutions. No follow-up, and it's usually a call center. And driven intake, you're actively engaging in leads, in rapport on the other end of the phone, really questions on that case, seeing the fears, building the trust, and closing. Relentlessly, decision is made, but really try not to let them off the phone if it is a case the firm wants, have signed that retainer. Solution equals sales. The sales is about connecting the needs with the solutions. Train your teams to be professionals, not order takers. And this may take some hiring. We've helped some firms look at, who who's currently working in the current intake, never been trained on handle calls of this nature, have proven scripts and stats that lead to conversions and always get assigned retainer. I always say it's disengaged than it is to chase. And a follow-up system, because most leads don't sign on the first call. So you always want to make sure you have a follow-up system in place. And if they don't sign on that first call, that you're reminding them that you can help. And it is not, the emails aren't scary, the text messages aren't scary. Make sure the person's okay. This is the scariest time of their life, no matter what they're going through. Throughout the whole process, even through text, email, and phone, is the most important. Make everything look so official. That's one of the other things we see, is that, submit a lead and I'll be in an audit and I'll get an email saying, official, we can help with your case. Consumers don't respond to that well, especially coming from a law firm. Most consumers don't deal with lawyers on a basis. Most people only deal with one lawyer to two lawyers in their entire life. So you have to make that experience where they feel very comfortable. Measure the performance with metrics like conversion rates, speed to lead, and follow-up effectiveness, and we have a ton others as well. Automation to close more cases, losing leads. The problem is manual intake is costly and ineffective. The firm is taking too long to respond, the lead moves on. 8% of the potential clients hire the first firm that calls them back, and not using multiple contact methods to reach a lead, such as email and text, is really ineffective, losing out. Now, if you're having to manually text people from your phone, another email client over here for something else, and you also have another system that you're responding to leads on, super inefficient. You want to bring everything under one pre-retainer software that will allow you to follow up on not only where the lead's coming from, how they're attributed, but also happening with them. What stage of the funnel are they in? Pull them along so you can have all those notes, and then all the communication will happen in one place. When you're ready to sign them, you have all that information to carry on. Also, the file in the case management system. One of the things that we always see is leads falling through the cracks. So because there's no centralized system to track on incoming leads instantaneously, sometimes some are in email. I just heard the other day someone had being delivered to them on cell phone, that there was leads that were coming through an API. Realize all those things in the one place so you can track them and you know where they're coming from, and make sure you're tracking which ones can convert and at what value, so you know which lead sources are the most efficient and the most effective. Structured follow-up equals revenue. So you have to have structured follow-up. If you don't have some sort of SOP or some sort of automation that says, hey, on the first day, if we can't get a hold of them, we're going to text, call, email once, 3 times per day. Next day, we're going to do this. On the next day, we're going to do this. And for the next 3 weeks, here's what we're going to follow. And if we never get a hold of that person, is how we're going to re-engage with them. Because I never believe that anyone that we don't get in touch with isn't valuable for the firm. Even the cases that engage or decide not to hire us, or not to hire, or you decide not to take on because they don't have a case, those people still connected with you at some point. You need to re-engage with them. And we're having a webinar in 2 weeks about re-engagement. But the most basic form of that is just sending out birthday texts, holiday texts, and newsletters. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a full webinar all about re-engagement, more cases from the database that you have now, even the cases that you don't take. Staff doing low ROI tasks. So this is something else we see, is that you don't want to have your intake staff that's responsible for making all kinds of calls all day, following up with people, making sure that they're not entering leads, manually chasing follow-ups instead of closing, office admin work that they just fall into, and making sure that there's an incentive to close more retainers. And we talk to people all the time about, how we can point of plans and bonus structures and things to really motivate the sales-minded intake person to get them to convert more leads. Solution. Technology and automation are changing the game. Right now, instant lead response with AI and CRM tools, our software does it. It does it very well. Whenever a lead comes in, instantaneously send out an email and a text message asking them to book an appointment. For bookings is something else our system has built into it. That has been a huge game changer for us clients. And what we see is more and more people book appointments when they're available. And whether that's by Zoom or it's just a phone call, it's a very convenient way for them to figure out the best way to book time with you and around their schedule, especially if it's after hours. Follow-ups via text, email, and calls. Seconds, many of these up. You should definitely have some sort of plan on how much you follow up for how many weeks, and then when it goes into the re-engagement campaign, and then automated chatbots engage leads 24/7 and never miss an opportunity. This is also something you can do on social media. I've automated responses back for anyone that's interested at that time. Lead tracking and pipeline management is probably something that is a little bit more on the new side of intake. Is that for tracking leads throughout the whole process, you should be having some sort of pipeline of where they're at in the process. So if you've talked to them, if you've booked the appointment, if the attorney needs to follow back up, if you've sent them a retainer but they haven't sent it back, those are all different stages within a pipeline. Those are very, very important sales tactics that you have to follow so you know exactly where all the business is in your current funnel. What happens a lot is that we just kind of pick up the low-hanging fruit and we forget about the things that are kind of standing out there. Sometimes we send people retainers and they don't sign them. So why not automate that process and remind them that they have a document to sign? Automated follow-up sequences, this has been a big win, for our clients. Is 80% of the signed cases require 5 or follow-ups before conversion. I would say it may be a little bit more depending on the type of case. In personal injury and in criminal and divorce, stuff happens. We have to remember that we are, obviously when we're calling them, they're top of mind, but they may be sick in their health care. They may have had something go on with their criminal or divorce and family law case. You just never know what is happening with that PNC. So you have to continue to follow up, show empathy. Don't make it feel like it's to a certain deadline because you never know what's happening. Maybe some of the best cases out there are the ones, especially on the personal injury end, is the ones that ghost you. They went through something like that, a problem with it, or they're in the hospital, or maybe even worse. So make sure to always follow up and continue to follow up in those sequences as you go through it. It can be automated through email and SMS to keep your firm top of mind. And then instant response to every lead and text that gets sent back in. So you're as soon as they send that lead back in, you're talking with them, you're communicating with them. Can I give you a call? Whatever it takes to get them to the next step. Recording and performance analytics, track and score intake calls with your team. Make sure you're, recording calls. This is something that our system does very well. You look at how long the calls are, pathetic they are. We also do a lot of QA, so we can help you track teams throughout the course of the year. But also identify the weak spots and train your intake team to convert better and serve the client needs more effectively. So you want to make sure you're coaching them. You want to make sure you're looking at that. We do a lot of this already. It is something that you should be making sure that you're listening to and recording to. Smarter, not harder, how automation can skyrocket your intake. So traditional intake is what we see is sat there. There was no instant text or email to the person. Intake reps manually log the lead either into a case management system. We've even seen paper or an Excel spreadsheet. Have to call back to sign retainers. Follow-up is inconsistent or non-existent. Teams are bogged down with several other admin tasks and leads sit in inboxes for hours or days. Now, for the modern tech-enabled automated intake is that we can an instant response right away to PNC as soon as they fill out a form, all with us. So capture the lead data and sync with the CRM. We can do e-signatures sent to them during the course of the process. The follow-up sequence to ensure the conversion. Automation can handle routine tasks and the reps to close. Always instant response. We want instant response. So whenever someone texts in or emails in, we are back to them. Even if it says we'll be right back with you, just so they feel like they've reached the right person, text, email, or call. Sales-focused intake team. Your intake team is the conversion team. Train them like it. Intake teams are hired as receptionists or assistants. But really start looking for people that have a sales background when you're looking for these roles. You really want someone that can out there and relate to the people, have empathy, and understand what the goal is at the end of the call. Sales training, they lack confidence and skills and will lead to not a lot of assigned retainers. So what you want to do is make sure you're doing some sort of training with them that gets people to the point where you're getting that retainer signed in whatever stage you want it signed. It's get answered and not closed. So another case, and this we think is a lot of cases go into unwanted. So they get answered, had to disappear, and then they get marked unwanted when in fact they weren't followed up with enough. Needed to talk to someone else. Maybe something happened and we dropped the ball. We don't know. So law firms spend thousands on these leads, and we have to get these leads answered and not mark them as unwanted, but mark them as a re-engagement campaign so we get them back, even if it's not on this accident or this case, but maybe their family member gets hurt or something else happens. Your top of mind awareness with especially if you're spending a lot on marketing. Follow-up strategy. So a lot of times we see this is that it's a one call. If we don't get them on the call the first time, intake rep gives up too soon. And, as we know, 5+ follow-ups is required. Track conversions, so they have no insight into the intake performance. So they don't even know that they're vulnerable to this. To train and structure your intake team for conversion, hire for sales ability, not just customer service. Intake reps need sales instincts, confidence, persuasion skills, not just a friendly voice. It is really important that you find someone that understands, how to talk to people, has talked to people in the past, has been in one of these roles. And the best intake teams are consultants that are close, receptionists that just take calls. So you really want to make sure that whoever is answering the phone in that next big case is someone that can represent your firm well, explain the benefits, really go through the process, and then get that retainer signed. You have to look at, this goes back to sales training and proven scripts and objection handling. Teach the intake reps how to lead conversations and handle objections. They're going to come across objections. Usually objections and this type of, when they come across objections, they've had long calls, that usually leads to call reluctance. And that means I don't want to pick up the phone again and go through that conversation again. That's why you need a high performing salesperson in that role that understands that you just have to dial the phone again and get to the next one. But this is very, very important because you have to make sure you have someone in there that really understands the difference between you, maybe another firm, how your firm handles this type of case and why it's important, and then making sure that you can, tell them, how you're different. Never ask, do you want to move forward? Instead, we can help you. Let's get started now. So it's very positive. It's very, it's just a slight change in what you say can get someone to that next step. They're taught to persuade, but seldom pass that skill set on to their team. So, obviously, all the lawyers on the call, you guys are very good at, obviously persuasion. Some of that training can be very, very useful when you're on the phone with a potential new client. That's why we see a lot of lawyers just answer their own calls, but that's really not the solution. There's so much technology and talent and training and overall support out there that you shouldn't be answering your own calls. You guys should be practicing law. You're tracking metrics, monitor conversion rates, speed to lead, follow-up effectiveness, spent on phone, number of closes, how many leads were handled in one day, how many callbacks. All those are really, really good. And obviously make sure you're listening to those calls. You should be rewarding the closers and not just the call handlers, and making sure that they have the right compensation in place for signed retainers. And high performance teams will always be incentivized like sales teams. So how can Intake Kings help? So we offer 4 different ways that we can help. First is a comprehensive intake audit, where we can come in and do a full-blown audit on everything that is going on in your intake in your firm. The second is is our intake software, where we can really help you with all those automated follow-ups and tracking and attributions and all those different things. Would be very, very helpful for the pre-retainer process. So advise firms and train teams on the shift from order taking to the sales driven approach. Like I said, I have years of sales experience, and the organization was built on sales being first, and intake team training, sales focused training that will really adapt around what your firm does and what your firm's process is, but help you become more efficient in that. We do offer software demos that we'll send out right after this email. We'd love to show you our software. If it fits into your cadence and what you want to accomplish, we can definitely help with that. What we find is our software replaces a lot of someone's tech stack when we go through an audit. So usually the audit is where we identify this, but saving you money on different types of programs like the ones above, amount of money as you're moving forward. So usually for this is with the intake audit. But if you're ready to transform your intake process, definitely the time you take. Software can track, assume retainers you're talking about, and also it can track payment plans if you had those set up as well. It just depends on what payment processor you use. Our intake team training works as we come in for the first 30 days. We really redevelop your intake department, change the SOPs. We come up with new processes. We help with automations. We evaluate your current team, and then we look at things. So as we go ahead and it's priced based on the firm. Some firms are bigger, some firms are smaller, so they have different ones. So if you'd like to for me to look at something specific, I'd be happy to do that and give you a quote on that. You can always certain users from contacting the firm if you have a bad interaction with them. Different making sure that the wrong people aren't thrown into the pipeline again, or they're trying to contact you or harass your staff. In a few weeks, we're going to have another webinar Tuesday, 2 weeks from today at 2:00 again, which is going to be all about re-engagement. Newsletters, things of that nature, birthday texts, holiday texts, how to re-engage with people in the past. Of course, we will send out a copy of this webinar. But before I get there, I definitely want to share a special offer. I know I talked about intake audit. That's the best way to get started with us. We are offering for a limited time offer is that you can get the intake audit for $99. We'll be sending that out to you right after the webinar here. And you will get an email and a text message, and you will have a link to sign up for that. You also have a link to look at our software too. If you just want to do a software demo, feel free to do that. We'd be happy to walk you through our software. You can also, with that link, if you have any questions about, intake training and things of that nature, we can talk about it on those calls as well. So a little bit more time here at the end for additional questions, but definitely would love for you guys to take advantage of the special offer. We'll take a deep dive into your intake process, identify gaps, missed opportunities, areas for improvement, create a customized action plan, give you a one-on-one strategy with our intake experts. Firms to sign up will get priority turnaround, and we'll have answers for you right away.